The twin suns of Xylon Prime hung low in the ash-colored sky, casting eerie shadows across the scarred landscape. The ground trembled with distant explosions, and the acrid scent of scorched metal and burning vegetation filled the air. Amidst the chaos, Captain Jack Reynolds moved with practiced precision, his eyes sharp despite the streak of blood matting his dark hair. His battle-worn armor bore the scars of countless skirmishes, but he carried himself with the steady confidence of a soldier who had seen worse and survived. Behind him, Sergeant Mason Lee followed closely, his heavy boots crunching over shattered debris. Lee was younger, leaner, but just as hardened by years of combat. "We're getting boxed in, Captain," Lee said, his voice strained but steady. "Those Dominion bastards have fortified the eastern ridge. If we don't find cover soon, we'll be vaporized, I know." Reynolds cut in, scanning the horizon through the smoke and dust. But retreat isn't an option. Not yet. Ahead lay the shattered remains of an ancient Xylon outpost, its towering spires reduced to jagged ruins by relentless artillery fire. It was a grim monument to the Galactic Dominion's unchecked aggression, a stark reminder the War Earth's forces had been thrust into after first contact had turned hostile. The outpost was their only chance of survival. If they could reach it, Reynolds tapped the side of his helmet, activating the comm link. "Echo Squad, report." Static crackled, followed by a garbled transmission. "Heavy resistance. Pinned down. Need support." "Damn it," Reynolds muttered. He clenched his jaw, weighing their dwindling options. The Dominion soldiers were relentless, their bio-enhanced forms and advanced plasma weaponry far superior to Earth's technology. But what the Galactic Dominion had in firepower, humanity made up for in grit, and Reynolds was a living testament to that. "We push forward," he ordered. "Get to the outpost, fortify our position, and hold until reinforcements arrive." Lee hesitated but nodded. "Understood, Captain." They advanced through the rubble-strewn wasteland, ducking behind twisted metal and charred rock formations as bursts of plasma fire seared the air around them. Reynolds moved with the fluidity of a predator, his senses honed to a razor's edge. Every step was calculated, every decision life or death. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the ground, throwing Reynolds and Lee to the dirt. Shards of glowing debris rained down, scorching the earth. Reynolds groaned, pushing himself up as pain lanced through his side. Blood seeped from a gash just below his ribs, but he gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand. "Captain," Lee shouted, scrambling to his feet. "You're hit." "I'll live," Reynolds growled, wiping blood from his face. "Keep moving." They reached the outer perimeter of the outpost, its once majestic walls now reduced to smoldering ruins. Dominion soldiers, towering figures clad in shimmering black armor, patrolled the area with mechanical precision. Their visors glowed ominously, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Reynolds signaled for Lee to take cover. "We need to thin their numbers," he whispered. "Draw their attention while I flank from the right." Lee's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Are you sure you're up for this, Captain?" Reynolds smirked, despite the pain. "I didn't come this far to die lying down." Lee nodded, determination hardening his features. "See you on the other side." As Lee opened fire, drawing the Dominion soldiers' attention, Reynolds moved swiftly along the rubble-strewn path, his breathing ragged but controlled. He slipped behind a collapsed tower, his sharp eyes tracking the enemy's movements. Suddenly, a metallic voice echoed through the chaos. "Primitive Earthlings," one of the Dominion soldiers sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. "They fight like insects, weak, disorganized, destined for extinction." Another soldier laughed, a guttural, mocking sound. "This one won't last much longer. Look at him, bleeding like a stuck animal." Reynolds clenched his fists, the sting of their words igniting a fire within him. He had faced death more times than he could count, but nothing fueled his resolve like being underestimated. These alien bastards thought they were invincible, superior in every way. They had no idea what humanity was capable of what he was capable of. Ignoring the searing pain in his side, Reynolds raised his rifle and took aim. The first shot hit the lead soldier square in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Before the others could react, Reynolds fired again, dropping another with ruthless efficiency. Panic spread among the Dominion ranks as they scrambled for cover. Reynolds moved like a ghost through the ruins, his every shot precise and deadly. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was making a statement. By the time the dust settled, the remaining Dominion soldiers were in full retreat, their arrogance shattered. Reynolds stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving. Lee emerged from his cover, a look of awe on his face. "Remind me never to doubt you again, Captain," Lee said, grinning despite the blood smeared across his cheek. Reynolds smirked, though his expression remained hardened by the weight of the battle. Lesson learned. As they regrouped, the comm link crackled to life. "Reinforcements inbound," a voice reported. "ETA 5 minutes. Reynolds exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The fight was far from over, but they had bought themselves a chance. A slim one, but that was all he needed. "Let's fortify this position," he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion tugging at his limbs. "The Dominion will be back, and when they come, we'll be ready." Lee nodded, his expression fierce. "Damn right we will." As the two soldiers prepared for the next wave, Reynolds couldn't help but think of the Dominion commander's mocking words. Weak, disorganized, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Jack Reynolds' breath was shallow as two massive Dominion soldiers dragged him through the metallic corridors of their command base. His armor, once a proud symbol of Earth's finest soldiers, was scorched and dented, clinging to him like a second skin despite the damage. Blood seeped from the gash below his ribs, but he gritted his teeth and kept his head high. He had faced pain before. This was just another battle scar. The aliens hauling him moved with mechanical precision, their gleaming black armor adorned with intricate energy conduits that pulsed with a sickly green glow. Their features were harsh and angular, their eyes cold and calculating. Jack knew their kind all too well. The genetically enhanced shock troops of the Galactic Dominion. They were bred for war, engineered to see themselves as gods among lesser beings. The corridor opened into a cavernous chamber lit by ominous red lights. At its center stood a throne-like command platform, elevated above rows of flickering holoscreens. General Vakhdar loomed over the scene, his imposing frame wrapped in ceremonial battle robes reinforced with plates of alien alloy. His pale skin shimmered under the dim lighting, and his eyes burned with a mixture of malice and arrogance. "So this is the infamous Captain Jack Reynolds," Vakhdar drawled, his voice reverberating through the chamber like grinding metal. "The best Earth can offer, reduced to a bleeding husk. Pathetic." The Dominion guard shoved Jack to his knees, but he refused to bow fully. He straightened as much as his injuries would allow, meeting the general's gaze with defiant eyes. "You talk too much," Jack said, his voice hoarse but unwavering. Vakhdar's lips curled into a smirk. "And you Earthlings are amusingly stubborn, always clinging to your illusions of strength." He descended from the platform, his heavy boots echoing ominously. "Tell me, Captain, do you know why your kind is destined to perish?" Jack remained silent, his jaw clenched. Vakhdar gestured to one of the holoscreens displaying footage from the battlefield. Dominion soldiers moved with lethal precision, cutting down Earth's forces with frightening ease. "We are superior in every way, stronger, faster, infinitely more advanced. And yet you continue this futile resistance." One of the soldiers beside Jack chuckled, his voice distorted through his helmet. "Primitive mammals. They barely qualify as sentient." The other guard sneered. "They probably still fight with sticks and stones on their mudball of a planet." Jack's fist tightened, but he forced himself to remain still. He could feel the heat of their mockery pressing down on him, but he knew better than to rise to the bait. Anger was a weapon best wielded with precision, not recklessness. Vakhdar leaned in closer, his voice low and taunting. "You're nothing but a relic, Captain. A dying breed from a backwater world that will soon be forgotten. Tell me, How does it feel to know your species is obsolete? Jack met the general's gaze without flinching. I wouldn't start writing our obituary just yet. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the hum of the Dominion's technology. For a moment, Vakhtar's smug expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. You truly believe your kind has a chance? Vakhtar asked, his tone incredulous. Even now, with your forces in disarray and your body broken? Jack's lips curved into a faint, defiant smile. You'd be surprised what we can survive. Vakhtar straightened, his expression hardening. Fascinating, but ultimately irrelevant. He waved a dismissive hand. Take him to the interrogation chamber. Perhaps pain will loosen his tongue. The guards yanked Jack to his feet, dragging him toward a set of reinforced doors at the far end of the chamber. His muscles screamed in protest, but he forced himself to stay upright. Each step was agony, but Jack had learned long ago that pain was temporary. Defeat, however, was permanent, and he had no intention of surrendering. As they passed through the doors, the taunts of the Dominion soldiers echoed behind them. Soft, weak humans, one sneered. They break so easily. Jack gritted his teeth, the words fueling the fire inside him. He had been underestimated before, by enemies, by doubters, even by himself at times. But he had never let it stop him, and he wasn't about to start now. The interrogation room was cold and sterile, its walls lined with sinister-looking instruments designed to inflict maximum pain. The guard strapped Jack into a metal chair, thick restraints binding his wrists and ankles. A mechanical arm descended from the ceiling, tipped with a glowing needle that pulsed ominously. Vakhtar's voice crackled through a speaker embedded in the wall. This is your last chance, Captain. Tell us the location of your command base, and I might let you die quickly. Jack's smile returned, sharper this time. Go to hell. The needle hissed as it descended toward his arm, but Jack barely registered the pain as it pierced his skin. He focused instead on the one truth that had kept him alive through every hellish battle he'd fought. Resilience was a weapon far more powerful than any plasma rifle or energy blade. The Dominion could mock him, torture him, even try to break him, but they would never take away his will to fight. And when the time came, he would make sure they regretted ever thinking they could. Pain radiated through Jack Reynolds' body as he leaned heavily against the cold metallic wall of the Dominion detention block. His breath came in shallow gasps, each movement a reminder of the brutal interrogation he had endured. The air was thick with the sterile tang of disinfectants, but the faint hum of energy fields and clattering of distant boots kept him grounded in the harsh reality of his situation. The Dominion guards had made one critical mistake. They thought the fight had left him. Jack smiled grimly, blood crusted at the corner of his mouth. They didn't know Earth's soldiers, didn't understand the fire that burned in those who had nothing left to lose but everything to protect. A flicker of movement drew Jack's attention to a security drone hovering near the ceiling. Its sensors pulsed with a rhythmic glow, scanning the room for any sign of unauthorized activity. Jack's mind worked rapidly, calculating distances and weaknesses. He spotted a maintenance conduit partially hidden behind a panel near the floor, a possible route out if he could create a distraction. The drone swept closer, its sensors fixed on Jack's unmoving form. He waited, muscles taut despite the agony racking his body. As the drone dipped lower, Jack sprang into action. With a burst of adrenaline, he lunged forward, ripping a loose shard of metal from the wall and driving it into the drone's core. Sparks erupted, and the machine spiraled wildly before crashing to the floor in a shower of smoke. The blaring of alarms followed immediately, red lights flashing along the corridor. Jack's heart pounded, but fear had no place here, only action. He pried open the maintenance panel, revealing a narrow crawlspace barely wide enough for his broad frame. Grimacing, he forced himself inside, the walls scraping against his bruised shoulders. The confined tunnel stretched endlessly, each inch a grueling test of endurance. Sweat slicked Jack's skin as he dragged himself forward, the wail of alarms fading into the distance. His thoughts sharpened, focused on survival and revenge. The Dominion had underestimated him, mocked his resilience, and now they were about to pay for that mistake. After what felt like an eternity, the crawl space opened into a dimly lit chamber filled with rows of Dominion weaponry. Plasma rifles, energy grenades, and advanced combat gear gleamed under the cold lights. Jack's lips curled into a grim smile. It was as if fate had handed him the tools for his retaliation on a silver platter. He moved quickly, strapping a plasma rifle to his back and pocketing several grenades. The weight of the weapons was reassuring, a reminder that he was far from defenseless. Armed and dangerous, Jack slipped through a side passage that led toward the command center. Dominion soldiers patrolled the corridors, their black armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Jack kept to the shadows, his movements fluid and silent despite the pain coursing through him. His sharp eyes tracked every guard's position, calculating angles and escape routes. 2 soldiers approached from the opposite direction, their heavy boots echoing ominously. Jack waited, muscles coiled like a predator preparing to strike. As they drew near, he stepped out from the shadows, his plasma rifle raised. The first soldier didn't have time to react before Jack fired a searing bolt of energy into his chest. The second soldier stumbled, reaching for his weapon, but Jack was faster. He delivered a brutal kick to the soldier's knee, dropping him to the floor before finishing him with a precise shot. Breathing heavily, Jack continued his advance. The corridor widened into a vast control room, dominated by holographic displays, showing tactical readouts of Dominion operations. At the center stood General Vakhdar, his pale skin shimmering under the flickering lights. Vakhdar's lips curled into a sneer as he spotted Jack. "Ah, the stubborn earthling returns," he mocked. "You should have stayed in your cage." Jack leveled his rifle at the general. "I've never been good at taking orders." The room erupted into chaos as Dominion soldiers opened fire. Jack moved with deadly precision, weaving through bursts of energy and returning fire with ruthless efficiency. His shots were unerring, each one finding its mark and dropping the enemy where they stood. An explosion rocked the room as Jack hurled an energy grenade into a cluster of soldiers. The blast sent them flying, their armor scorched and shattered. Smoke filled the air, mingling with the acrid scent of burning circuitry. Through the haze, Jack advanced on Vakhdar, who stood defiantly amidst the carnage. "You think this changes anything?" the general snarled. "Your species is doomed." Jack's voice was cold, devoid of mercy. "Not today." He fired, the bolt of energy striking Vakhdar square in the chest. The general's eyes widened in shock before he crumpled to the floor, his body convulsing as the life drained from him. Silence fell over the control room, broken only by the crackle of damaged systems. Jack stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving. The weight of the battle pressed heavily on him, but victory tasted sweet. Activating the command terminal, he transmitted the captured tactical data to Earth's fleet. "This is Captain Jack Reynolds," he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. "Dominion stronghold neutralized. Sending intel now. Let's end this war." The transmission confirmed. Jack allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The Dominion had mocked him, tried to break him, but he had turned their arrogance into their downfall. As reinforcements approached from the distant horizon, Jack knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The fight wasn't over, but humanity had just proven they were far from finished. And Jack Reynolds would be there until the very end. The wind howled across the charred battlefield, carrying with it the acrid stench of burning metal and scorched earth. Jack Reynolds stood at the edge of the ruined Dominion outpost, plasma rifle still warm in his grasp. His breathing was heavy, his body bruised and bloodied, but his resolve remained unshaken. Smoke curled into the darkened sky, blotting out the stars like a grim omen of the violence that had unfolded. In the distance, Earth's reinforcements advanced through the wasteland, soldiers in advanced combat, suits moving with deadly purpose. Dropships roared overhead, their engines cutting through the thick smoke as they deployed squads to secure the area. The tide of war had shifted. Jack had made sure of that. A voice crackled over his comm. "Captain Reynolds, this is Echo Command. We've received your transmission and confirmed the intel. Outstanding work. Reinforcements are sweeping through the sector as we speak." Jack wiped a smear of blood from his temple, his voice steady despite the fatigue gnawing at him. "The Dominion won't recover from this one. Their command structure is in ruins." "Copy that," the voice replied. "Extraction team is en route. Hold your position." Jack didn't respond immediately. His gaze was fixed on a lone figure emerging from the smoke, a Dominion officer clad in battered armor, his movements slow but purposeful. Jack recognized the insignia on the alien's chestplate, a high-ranking field commander. The officer's pale skin gleamed under the flickering light of nearby fires, and his eyes burned with a mixture of hatred and desperation. Despite the chaos around him, he carried himself with the arrogance typical of the Dominion elite. Jack raised his rifle, the weapon's targeting display locking onto the officer's chest. "Stay where you are," he ordered, his voice cold and unyielding. The officer sneered, his voice sharp and guttural. "You think this victory means anything human? You are vermin scurrying in the shadows of a dying empire." Jack's finger hovered over the trigger, but he held his fire. Killing this officer might be satisfying, but information was more valuable than vengeance. "Your empire's already dead," Jack said evenly. "You just don't know it yet." The officer's expression twisted with fury. "You underestimate the Dominion's resolve. We will rise from the ashes stronger than ever." Jack took a step closer, his gaze unflinching. "Not this time. You've lost control of the sector. Your command is broken, and your soldiers are either dead or running scared." The officer's confidence wavered, a flicker of doubt crossing his features. Jack seized the moment. "Tell me where your remaining forces are regrouping," he demanded. "Make it easy on yourself." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy with tension. The officer's jaw clenched, but pride warred with self-preservation in his eyes. Jack knew that look. It was the same one he'd seen on countless Dominion soldiers before they realized defeat was inevitable. Before the officer could speak, a distant explosion rocked the ground beneath them. Flames erupted from a nearby fuel depot, sending debris raining down. Jack shielded his face, gritting his teeth against the heat. Through the chaos, he saw the Dominion officer make a desperate break for cover. Jack cursed under his breath and sprinted after him, his boots pounding against the scorched earth. The officer was fast despite his injuries, weaving through the wreckage with practiced agility. Jack pushed himself harder, ignoring the burning pain in his side. He couldn't let this one get away, not after everything he'd fought for. The Dominion's remnants had to be crushed completely, and this officer held the key. The chase led them to the edge of a jagged ravine, its depths shrouded in darkness. The officer skidded to a halt, realization dawning too late that he was trapped. Jack slowed to a stop a few paces away, rifle still trained on his target. "Nowhere left to run," Jack said, his voice hard. "Surrender, and maybe I won't toss you into that pit." The officer's chest heaved as he glared at Jack, defiance flickering in his eyes. "You think you've won?" he spat. "The Dominion never truly dies." Jack's lips thinned into a grim smile. "Maybe not, but you won't live to see it." The officer lunged suddenly, drawing a concealed blade with blinding speed. Jack reacted on instinct, sidestepping the attack and driving the butt of his rifle into the officer's ribs. The alien gasped, staggering backward toward the edge of the ravine. "You don't have to die here," Jack said, his tone measured but firm. "Tell me what I need to know." The officer's expression twisted with contempt. "I'd rather burn." With a final, defiant glare, the officer stumbled backward into the abyss, his body vanishing into the darkness below. Jack stood at the edge, breathing heavily, the echoes of the officer's fall fading into silence. For a long moment, Jack remained there, staring into the void. The Dominion had been dealt a crushing blow, but war was rarely so simple. There would be more battles, more losses, but today was a victory hard-earned. The sound of approaching dropships pulled Jack from his thoughts. He turned to see Earth's soldiers advancing, their presence a testament to the resilience of humanity. As the extraction team landed nearby, Jack lowered his rifle, the weight of the fight finally settling over him. The reckoning had come and gone, leaving only ashes in its wake. But Jack knew one thing for certain. Earth would rise stronger, unyielding in the face of any threat. And as long as he drew breath, Jack Reynolds would be there to ensure that no one, human or alien, forgot what it meant to stand and fight. The sky above Xylon Prime was streaked with the fading glow of dawn, a strange serenity settling over the once chaotic battlefield. Smoke still rose in curling tendrils from pockets of wreckage, but the echoes of war had grown faint. Jack Reynolds stood atop a ridge overlooking the ruins of the Dominion stronghold, his battered form silhouetted against the pale horizon. The weight of victory pressed heavily on his shoulders. Blood crusted the edges of his armor, and the acrid scent of charred metal clung to his skin. Every muscle ached, but the pain was a distant whisper compared to the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. He exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from his body. The Dominion's grip on Xylon Prime had been shattered, its forces scattered or destroyed. But this triumph hadn't come without cost. Jack had seen too many friends fall, their sacrifices etched into the landscape, like scars that would never fade. A familiar voice crackled over his comm. "Captain Reynolds, this is Echo Command, confirming complete sector control. The fleet reports no remaining Dominion resistance." Jack tapped the side of his helmet. "Acknowledged. What's the status of evac?" "En route," the operator confirmed. "Should be there in 10. Understood. Reynolds out." The line went dead, leaving Jack alone with the haunting quiet of the aftermath. He scanned the horizon, his sharp gaze catching glimpses of Earth's soldiers moving through the debris, securing key positions and tending to the wounded. Despite the victory, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this war was far from over. The Dominion might be down, but they were a resilient foe, too stubborn to stay buried for long. He knew better than to let hope blind him to the harsh realities of conflict. Still, today was a step forward, a hard-earned reminder that humanity was stronger than its enemies believed. Jack clenched his fists, the resolve in his chest burning hotter than ever. The Galactic Dominion had mocked Earth, sought to break its spirit, but they had underestimated the will of a soldier who refused to surrender. Footsteps crunched over the scorched ground behind him. Jack turned to see Mason Lee approaching, his face smeared with soot but alight with a hard-won grin. "Figured I'd find you up here," Mason said, his voice rough but steady. Always brooding after a fight. Jack huffed a tired laugh. "Just thinking." "About what?" "How many times we're going to have to do this before it ends," Jack admitted, his tone grim. Mason nodded, his expression sobering. "Yeah, I hear you, but we'll keep fighting until it does, right?" "Right," Jack said without hesitation. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the weight of shared experiences binding them together stronger than words ever could. "You did good, Jack," Mason finally said. "We all did." Jack glanced at his friend, appreciating the sincerity beneath the gruff demeanor. "Couldn't have done it without the team." Mason smirked. "Well, you sure made it look like you did most of it yourself." Jack shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just lucky, I guess." Before Mason could respond, the low rumble of approaching dropships echoed across the landscape. Jack watched as the sleek crafts descended, kicking up clouds of dust as they prepared for extraction. "Looks like our ride's here," Mason said. Jack nodded, his gaze lingering on the horizon one last time. The scars of war would remain, but so would the resolve to heal and rebuild. That was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to endure, adapt, and rise stronger from every challenge. As the dropships settled onto the ground, their doors hissing open, Jack felt a sense of closure settle over him. This battle was over, but the war for Earth's future was far from won. He slung his rifle over his shoulder and started toward the waiting craft, Mason falling into step beside him. "You coming?" Mason asked, a hint of humor returning to his voice. "Yeah," Jack said, his voice steady. Time to head home. As they boarded the dropship, engines roaring to life, Jack's thoughts remained fixed on the road ahead. There would be more battles, more losses, but also more victories. And as long as he had breath in his lungs and fire in his heart, Jack Reynolds would keep fighting. Because that was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to win.